until we're on like the third or fourth slide.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're being recorded, everybody. Nobody picked their nose.
Everyone's being too quiet now.
Oops.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
If you would have told me that earlier, I would have worn pants.
Well, that's the key thing. You don't actually have to wear pants for the meeting, you know.
Yeah,
Ellen,
Andy, you
Ellen,
might want to move the mirror, Andy.
yeah, well, Ellen's there with you know, the sun rising, so she must be in the space station.
She's
I
muted.
wouldn't mind being
Alan's
there
muted.
right now.
Is Alan not with us today?
Hi, Ray, I'm here.
He's there. He's there.
Oh, Ellen. Ellen or Alan, I can't tell the difference.
Ellen,
Ellen's with
I'm
us.
here.
Ellen's here.
Ellen looks like she's in orbit.
I know,
Good, Alan.
I am.
Actually, I think she's beyond orbit.
She's out of this world, isn't she?
She's in
I invited a special guest from the East Bay.
I'm getting dizzy watching Ellen over there.
Yeah, I know.
Hi, Jason.
I don't know how I got here. Hi.
Too many cups of coffee this morning.
she's having an outer body experience.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to start on time. So
Oh my God.
all I have to do is now find the screen that I have where it tells me to start sharing. Just a second. I probably stepped on that one. Oh, there it is.
Why is she? Ellen, I don't know why you're bobbing all around.
I'm walking down the stairs,
Oh, okay.
trying to find a nice cool spot outside where I can watch.
Spacewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding.
There we go. All right, here we are. Welcome, everybody. And we have a shorter deck today. Normally, our deck is something like 50 or 60 slides long. And today, we've managed to have a deck which is much smaller. Let me just scroll over here just a second. Yep. Oh, I can't grab the window here. Okay, I'm trying to look at you guys and look at the screen at the same time, and now I can't get the screen to go over.
Well, you've got two eyes. Why are you limited?
Yeah. I know, but I feel obligated to look at you. I just lost my mouse is the problem. My mouse got confused, and this happens. Oh well.
Deep breath, Jerry.
Yeah, but this is actually interesting. Just a second. Sorry. We're going to lose something here for a second. I've seen this before. Oh, there, the mouse is back. Okay, good. Okay, share. Okay, and now I have to share
Great.
again.
Great orbit hat, Ellen.
Yeah, protecting yourself from cosmic rays there, Ellen.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there. Okay. There's a new bug in the operating system on the Mac that allows it to lose the mouse. Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that. All right. Welcome to the meeting. And here we are on the web again. Start with introductions. And Ray, you got on first, so you get to be introduced first. Well, I'll introduce myself first. I'm Jerry Glazer. I drive a Nissan Leaf that's being charged in the garage right now. It's not getting a lot of miles. I really do like it. I don't know about you Tesla guys. I've driven the Tesla now too. I like the Leaf better. Right?
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm Ray Alden, the voice of experience. I own a Tesla Model S, which my unpaid chauffeur uses to take me when I have to go out.
Okay. hope I do this in the right order. If I miss somebody, what happens is the screen keeps changing the order of all your names. David, why don't you go next? David Heacock.
Hi, I'm Dave Heacock. I have a 1985 Avani, which started out as Studebaker, but for anybody that keeps saying Avani, I don't know if everybody knows that it started from Studebaker. And it's in a state of disrepair. I took the front windshield out. We're replacing the windshield and found a lot of rust on the A pillars, which is common. So I've been talking to different people, but I think I have the metal work done. I've just ordered the windshield and hope to get that within the next couple of weeks. So it's been kind of sitting in the shop doing not much, but I kind of want to get back and drive it. I like driving EVs. So.
Yeah, you know, it's funny with the rust. Caleb, one time I was complaining about rust on something, and he said, "Oh, try this stuff," and I sprayed this chemical on. I was blown away by how this rust disappeared.
Oh yeah, they got a lot of stuff out there now. Even Harbor Freight has some stuff if you can dip parts into it. I mean, it's amazing how it cleans them up. But the trouble is, a lot of this rust had to be cut out and replaced and re-welded and stuff. So
I'm used to grinding and stuff. Sonja, you're up.
Hi, I'm Sonja. I drive a Model 3 and we also have a Chevy Volt. And shout out to my Ego mower, which I really like too.
My electric mower hasn't been used in years because we don't have a lawn anymore. So, Mark, you're up.
Drive a 2013 RAV4 EV, which we really like. Stan was kind enough this last week, let me drive his brand new Model Y, which was almost scary. It's so fast. And one last thing I'd like to say is we had a dear friend who just passed away with COVID. So let's all be careful and be safe out there. Watch what you're doing.
Al, why don't you go, because you just popped up on my screen.
You mean Al?
Al, as opposed to Alan.
Yeah, thank you. Many of you, I'm Al McLaughlin, Petaluma. Many of you may have known I was waiting for a Mustang Mach-E to become available. Been a lot of frustration. I won't get into that. But anyway, I ended up buying an I-Pace. They're selling off I-Paces at an unbelievable, this is a 2019, but brand new. They got about 200 of them left in the US. So anyway, great car. I talked to Bruce a lot about the e-tron. He helped me a lot decide to not buy an e-tron because, as you know, he has one. But anyway, if anybody was interested in knowing more, I'd be glad to help them figure it out. Great car.
On my screen, next person that shows is John.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Yeah, in our family, we have a Chevy Bolt that's fairly new to us. That's my daughter's, and I drive the converted Geo Metro with the Nissan Leaf motor that gets 180 miles range, and also have a pickup that was the first conversion in 2011 from it's a Toyota that's now in the shop to get a new motor, a Leaf motor in that too. So that's fun. And we have
how's the shop doing? We missed the shop.
The shop's doing well. It's just COVID turned into sort of a different kind of a nightmare where we're way too busy. Everybody's doing projects at home, which, I mean, it's a great sign of the times. I really wouldn't have expected this, but it seems like COVID, in my picture, has kind of exposed people to their dreams of going electric because they've got time. And boats, we're selling twice as many of everything right now. It's just amazing. So
what's going on with that Studebaker?
What Studebaker?
Brian Studebaker that he got. He's going to convert.
He plans to put a UQM motor in it like yours, a little bigger, and let's see, a direct drive to the rear end through a little transmission that he has. So yeah, one of those things is he got, and it's going to be pretty cool. He's planning to use a Chevy Bolt battery pack, because we have a bunch of those. And yeah, this Studebaker, he talks about it like it's a lightweight car, but it looks like a tank. So that's fun.
All right, next up, let's see who we have here. Mike Noel, you're next.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Bring your mic in a little bit closer. You can barely hear you.
Working into what I'm going to do about our
Can't understand you.
No, can't understand a thing you're saying.
Since my class, I've started looking at what I'm doing about our second car. With Sonoma. Still up or down.
Mike, I think you need to change your internet service provider.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
Can't hear Mike.
All right, then we'll pass.
Give me a second. Let me try. I'm going to mute me for a second. Woody once suggested if I do that, you might sound better. Try.
No, we pass.
Okay. Okay, you passed. Jason, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, I'm a friend of Sonja's, and I am so looking forward to hearing her report about her road trip. And I've got a Model 3. I've got one of the first Model 3s that came out a while back.
Alan?
Now.
Wait a second. Whoever's speaking, raise your hands because we can't tell what you're saying. All right, Alan Soule.
Hey, Alan Soule. I drive I have a Roadster and a Model 3 in the garage that I have changed my policy on now. I used to plug both of them in every night and keep them charged. Now it's like once a month. Not necessary.
You're not going anyplace, huh?
No. I actually, between now and the last meeting, I had ordered a Model Y and this nice little trailer, pull-behind trailer, and that was the reason for the Model Y. But like 2 days after I ordered the two of those things, the news came out that the COVID was spreading all over the country and nobody was wearing masks. I decided, you know what, it's not worth it. What I didn't want to do is get in some campground in, Biloxi, Mississippi, and come down with the COVID and not had any way to deal with it. So anyway, so it's staying at home.
Andy, why don't you go next? But make sure the waterfall doesn't make too much noise.
Yeah, I'm Andy Ferguson. I've got the same setup as Sonja does in her household. We've got a Model 3 and a Bolt. And we're definitely on less mileage too, like Alan is, but well, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
To quote a famous line.
All right, Alan, you're next. And there's no asteroids hitting you, are there? Is that what the hat's for? The asteroids?
What'd you say?
Is the hat for the asteroids? To keep the asteroids from hitting you on the head?
No, yeah, I know. It's keep it from shining in my eyes. I drive a 2018 Leaf. Did I get that right?
You got it right this time, yeah.
Thanks. And I have a question for John Palmer Lee, if I may ask.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead and ask.
Okay, John, are you listening? Okay. I still need to bring in my electric wheelbarrow to get fixed. Can I do that at the shop?
Yeah, you can. It's just we're so freaking busy that make sure you talk with Brian and make a plan about, you know, what you need, and so that we can kind of fit it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, well, Cecilia will be next, but she's eating. Go ahead, Lowell.
Oh, Lowell Ansa. I have a 2013 Leaf and a 2014 Model S. I just got back from a trip to Yosemite, to Oona, and I took the Model S. My opinion, of course, I have an older Leaf, but in my mind, the Model S is a much better car, and I really enjoyed it. I let it do a whole lot of the driving, both steering and speed, for maybe more than half the trip, and it did a really good job. Just for everyone who doesn't know it, there is a supercharger in up in Fish Camp, so it was really easy to get charged up there and come back. Anyway, in case you're wondering, I'm just back from a bike ride, so hence my.
Where's Fish Camp?
Fish Camp is between Oakhurst and Wawona. It's
Okay.
just before the entry to the park, maybe a couple of miles before the park entrance.
Okay.
It's a little burg, a little town. It has a hotel there, and the chargers are at the hotel. There's about 6 of them, and nobody there, empty.
Yeah, it sounds like the hotel we stayed at going to Yosemite, but there was no charge stations there. We went back through the town before that, had
Yeah.
coffee for the 3. I didn't like the 3. It kept driving across the road. It told to go on its own. Yeah. All right, Cecilia, you ready?
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I drive a Model 3 Tesla. I have never driven a Leaf, although my first ride in an electric car was a Leaf. You want to let Mike give another try? Wait, did Mike disappear? Never mind. Oh, yes.
We'll get there. And you guys keep jumping around on my screen. So, Bernie, you jumped in there too.
I did? Okay. You want me to say something or?
Yeah. Say something. We don't see you. All we see is your sky.
Oh, I've been fiddling to figure out what's going on because I don't see me either. So I don't know what the deal is. But at any rate, I got a 3 and a Leaf and solar collectors, and I'm still waiting for the battery costs to come down a bit, and I can be self-sufficient. So that's just where I am.
Yeah, well, I ordered my batteries, and you're right, they're expensive. They're more expensive than they should be.
Did you go with the Tesla?
No, I went with the Sun, and I did a lot of research. The chemistry with the Tesla has a fairly short life.
Really? Yeah, well, I'd like to talk to you about that sometime.
Okay, yeah. There's for everybody, in fact, it was 2 or 3 meetings back, there was a presentation that was done by PG&E originally, but Sonoma Clean Power had a talk, and the same speaker spoke, and he just does research on batteries, stationary, and that's in one of the earlier presentations, and I provided the link. It's still posted up there, so if you want to look at that and see what Caldwell said, he covers the whole topic fairly well. And that's where I got a lot of my opinion, plus what I read on the web. Tar, you're next on my deck here.
All right. Yeah, I'm driving a Bolt 2017. We managed to extend our lease for a few months, GM reluctantly, but probably because we're just slow to make a new decision on what to get next. And then this week we were testing and sharing out how to plug a portable 1,000-watt percent inverter to power our refrigerator for wildfire season. We'll share out some details on that on our Carbon Conversation page. And then my daughter bought a 2013 used Tesla Model S and discovered camping mode and is really planning all kinds of road trips right now, which is kind of interesting. So that's what's going on here.
Okay. Hey, Bernie, 2 things. You might not go on mute because you keep hitting your microphone. And the second thing is reverse your camera because we see your feet. Put shoes on, will you?
Well,
Stan, you're up.
So we have a 2020 Model Y and a 2002 RAV4 EV that's still running. Thing won't die. And not a lot of miles on the Y. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And, it's been a great car to drive. A couple of little cosmetic issues to deal with, and that's about it.
Mike, do you want to try again? Do you have a new microphone?
Yes, I have a whole new computer. I don't know if it's any better.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, a ton better. Yeah.
All right, since everyone's missing, things that we do in the summertime, I put up the picture from our last Drive Electric day. But anyway, just like Tor, actually, Tor, I'm picking up some tips from you because I got my second car at the Sonoma Clean Power year that they last did the car incentives, and it's running out. So I have one more month on my lease, and I did call and can do probably a similar, this is a Kia, not a Chevy, but they'll do up to 6 months of month by month. And hopefully in the 6 months, I'll figure out what we do to replace it or keep it. That's it.
Okay, you're next on my deck.
Hello. So I have a 2015 BMW i3. I also have I have parts of a 1974 Volkswagen Super Beetle that I converted almost 10 years ago now. It's starting to return back to the earth, so I'm not sure that I'll continue with that. But the 2015 i3 I leased when I lived in California, and then I bought it out now that I live in Washington, and it's got, I don't know, 37,000 miles on it. Yeah, it's working for me.
And I've seen a whole bunch more baby blue bugs driving around in Sebastopol. It seems like the car here for some reason.
Mine's a new, it's this reddish brown color. Yeah.
Is it called rust?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, who have I missed here? Woody, I see your name.
Yes. Hi, I hope you can hear me. And my configuration today is such that I don't have my video camera. Sorry about that. But Woody Hastings here. We still drive a 2013 Chevy Volt with a V as in Victor. So hoping to graduate sometime in the next few.
Good. David Harris.
Okay. We had 3 Leafs, and then in that last Sonoma Clean Power program, we bought a Bolt. And I guess the comment I'll make today is those few shares of Tesla that I bought would now let me buy a Tesla. But the problem is it's in my daughter's college account. So I have resistance to doing that. She's going to be 16 in a few weeks. So that's what I got to say today.
All right. The faces all kept moving on me. Did I miss anybody? Everybody got in? Okay. Chapter business. I haven't updated this slide very much at all. And Lowell, did you clean up the bounced email message, people?
I looked at it, and I just got rid of the ones that were bounced.
Okay, good. Okay,
and
good.
just deleted them. Obviously, and they came along. They were part of the whole when I did the whole thing. Did mass. A whole bunch of them came up as bounced. So I just left them there, but now they're gone.
Okay. Oh, I'm not sharing the deck right now, Sonja? Oh, thank you.
And I know you work so hard on it.
Yeah, well,
Look at it.
There is that. I'm trying to also look at you guys when we're all talking here. So handling the multiple screens is sometimes an issue. Alan, one of the things I haven't got updates on is how much balance we have and how many official members we have. I like listening to that stuff too as we go along. So if you can send updates from time to time, I'll put them in the deck. Did everybody get this message?
Can't read it.
Oh, well, this is basically a message I tried to send to NBEAA Club. So if you have news items, respond back to this message, and then they'll show up in the right place, collected. So when I put the deck together, I can include all the news that you found. All I have to do is reply to the message. Don't change the subject. It turns out that changes the sorting and stuff. But we have a small amount of news this time because there weren't a lot of responses.
I did get the email, Jerry.
Oh, you got the email. That's right. You're not on team. And Ellen, did you get the email?
My ears are not very good. I don't know if you said Ellen or.
No, I said Ellen. I said Ellen.
Okay. Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Okay, who didn't get the email? Let me see somebody raise their hand who didn't get the email.
I don't know if I got it or not.
If you want to check, it came 4 days ago at 4:31 p.m.
Okay, good.
What would it be coming through, your normal email system or on this?
Yeah, your normal email should show up in your normal email system. And I sent one for August as well. And that was the first time that I sent it out to all the club members. It was difficult to figure out how to send it to the club members so that you could respond and it would go back to the right place. But I finally found a way to do that. So I just want to make sure you all get the message. All right. After the meeting, if it turns out that somebody hasn't got the message, let me know and I'll keep experimenting and see if I can get there.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
This is Mike. And so I got it. And again, this just a piece of information. So of course, as you said, it came from NBEAA Club, but the from address says NBEAA Administrator. I think
right. That's
most
the
of
only way I
them
can do
do.
it.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's the only way I can do it. But if you say reply, it's a reply back to NBEAA Team, which is where the program is constructed.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find a way from Team to send it to anybody except for team members. So that was the problem. Also, I'm a little confused, and for the web team, maybe you guys can help me out later on with this. I've been using categories to put the program together and organize everything. And it looks like Google is making that go away. And I thought it went away and we're going to use tags. But when I checked, then they said they're using labels. And I'm a little bit in a quandary as to how to organize the program once this happens. And sometime next year, it's going to definitely close off. And they have bugs now too, which they've now introduced. So it's there. The previous meeting on not June 13th, I forgot to change this. I should say July 8th. Thank you, reviewers, for missing this. Or July 12th with the presentation. And the video is posted, and I will fix this deck. So it'll say that. So if you missed the meeting and you want to see the meeting, you can click on that link, and that will take you to a video of the previous meeting. Events. There's still going to be National Drive Electric Week, but it's going to be virtual. Does anybody know anything about that? Nobody's plugged in?
Yeah. So I actually host the event up here in Vancouver, and there's been sparse information, but they're trying to get a count of who's having an actual live event and how they're handling it, because they will be sending out material if there are live events. But they also provided a handful of resources for virtual events and kind of how to run those. All on their website. You can access those.
Actually, there was one other thing here, which Alan Soleil and I picked up on. The EAA newsletter as a publication seems to have disappeared. That is, the paper version stopped being published, but then there was an electronic version that looked like the paper. And as far as I can tell, that stopped being published as well. Anybody else have any news on that?
I got the same experience, so I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I like reading it offline, so I can go down to a coffee house or down in the park and read it. But there's articles, and you can read the articles online. I actually like the advertisements too. I get a lot out of the advertisements. So.
Yeah.
I think it was because, as I mentioned in the email, that the old style was pretty much entirely done by Ron Freund, the former president, and now he's, I'm sure, stepping down and wanting some more free time. Can you imagine putting together a 40 to 50 page newsletter every month? I mean,
yeah, I mean, if it's one person doing it, I mean, that's even Alan. For years, you put this together, before each meeting, and even just putting this deck together and collecting the information is 8 or 9 hours worth of work. Imagine doing 50 pages. I mean, that's over the top.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
Because you have this slide up, there's something I wanted to show everybody. This is just my little fantasy about what to do on the Drive Electric Week. I went online and found a a window flag company that you can get flags printed for pretty cheap. I got a couple of flags. They cost me about $7 each, and this is what they are. Let's see.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Cool.
This is the thing that I made up anyway. It's like, why I drive electric, and gave some reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of fun. And I thought maybe if anybody else wanted one, I've got an extra one. Jerry, I offered to give it to you, but
I'm not driving around that much.
As I say, it's not effective in your garage.
Hey, just an idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, Al McLaughlin here. Can we talk a second about that this possible event?
Yeah, sure.
My grandchildren live in the Bay Area, and they're both 11, and they had an interesting experience at the end of their 5th grade elementary school period during COVID here when the school got out in June. All their teachers drove by in a parade by each student's house, and they knew when they were going to get there. There was kind of a time that they knew they were going to drive by, so my grandchildren could be out in front of the house with their parents, and they all the teachers waved out of their cars and had signs on their cars and all that stuff. And it was a very uplifting thing for the kids and for the teachers, obviously. So I had this thought that maybe it's a bad thought, but that if we had some kind of media thing that said, hey, if you're interested in an electric car or seeing a couple of electric cars, we'll drive by your house and stop for 5 minutes. Just tell us, we're gonna have it on a certain day between certain hours. Tell us where you live, what kind of cars you want. And then a group of us could drive our cars by those houses, stop for 10 minutes, get out with a mask. They can't get in the car, but they can look at it. We can talk about how enthused we are or whatever, something like that. And then drive on. So it solves one of the problems that Alan Soule has about not being able to get miles on his car. Does that. And at the same time, lets us talk about our cars, which we all like to do. And it might scratch an itch that other people have, or it might not, but at least we would find out, because people would not sign up if they weren't interested, right? So that's the notion anyway to think about.
Well, do you want to take the notion and see if you can get a group together to figure out how to do this?
Well, let me, yes, that'd be great. Let me ask on the chat if you could just put your name in there that you'd be interested in driving your car on that day. Let's just say it's 3 hours. 3 hours around Sonoma County, probably in our area, Sebastopol, Petaluma, Santa Rosa, maybe Windsor, that geography. Anybody have any input on that as an idea?
Well, I really like the idea of driving around on that day. My challenge is I'm not as comfortable with getting out and talking to people because I don't know, I'm not sure if we'll get a lot of interest with all the COVID thing, maybe, but I mean, it's a good idea. my dream would be to just get together and drive, and then we're all isolated, we're all safe, and not interfering with anybody else's private space. Except,
So would you drive by their houses with a sign on your car that said what it was? Is that the notion?
or just, have a little parade around Santa Rosa or Sebastopol or something, and just all of us go together. Just everybody drive.
Like a mob parade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go for that. But maybe people could ask for us to drive by as a parade.
That's true. Yeah.
So then they could be out in front of their house at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock and see the stream of 15 or 20 cars go by.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I would do that.
Question of how we would advertise something like that comes up, though, or how it would be put in the media effectively.
Right.
Seems like you'd want to define the route based on maybe population density and then advertise it that way. Say, this is where we're going to drive by. If you live on that route.
That's a good idea.
Or, get out and wear your mask and go for a walk, and we'll be going by at X time in the day.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah.
Right. You promote a parade route or something.
Mm-hmm. A few years ago, the Sunnyvale or the Silicon Valley group did the big parade to get the most EVs in a parade award or whatever it was. I think they got the Guinness book.
That's right. We both did that.
Yeah. I got my bug in that.
I like that idea of advertising by town, or stating in some kind of editorial or whatever by town when you're going to be there, and then
It would impress the viewers about how many EVs are really out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could also ask transit and see if we can get the electric bus to be on the route with us too.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be fun.
Yeah. They could lead the parade.
Well, as usual, for something like that to happen, somebody has to volunteer to be leading it up and put a group together. Is anybody volunteering to lead it up, put a group together?
What's the date? I'm sorry. What's the date of that week?
It's the week of the 15th or 16th, something like that.
Yeah, it's September 26th to October 4th, according to what I pulled off the web.
Well, I'd be willing to be involved. I don't want to head it up, but I'd get involved.
I'm always gone my problem is I'm always gone that week. So I'm sorry, what September, what on 24th?
September 26th through October 4th.
Yeah, I'm back. I'll volunteer to head it up, Al.
Okay, great.
My name's Alan Soule.
Yeah, you're right. I knew that.
I have a response to that, but I don't think I should say it in this company.
Yeah, this is Tor. I'll just add something because we're trying to come up with some lessons for schools that are solar or using plants or whatever, because this is all, they're going back to distance learning mode. And, one thing, if you want to build on this idea of encouraging a class to study clean transportation, clean vehicles, and then having an interaction with that class, then I would also say dig up whatever videos you have of your car, your vehicle, or make a new one, and they can, you can share your features that way. Because driving by, it's like, oh, that's cool, but if they, how it is if you talk to somebody about their car or get to hear about their car, then from that person, that's more powerful. So just that would be something to think about as far as adding to this. And then I could help reach out to teachers at schools and say, here's what we could offer if you want to do a lesson on. So they're doing a little study beforehand about clean vehicles and so forth, and then this is part of their interaction. And so rather than it's for example, if you just gave everybody a plant and said, okay, go have at it, building off of that, working off some other lessons and So I would say just each individually think about how you can film a little feature about what you would share with people in person if you were at a rally or something like that, and do a little video clip. I mean, we know how to do it. It's not going to be perfect, but at least it'll be something to share with kids and other people.
And then maybe on a date after these parade things, have a meeting just like this, which would be in the media information, where they could have a Zoom question answer period.
Yeah, something like that.
I wonder if we could even just make little QR codes that you stick in your windshield, and if somebody wanted to see your video as you're coming by, they can walk up and take a shot, and they've got the QR code and then have the link.
Right. Easier though would be just to have a number on the car and then have it linked on our website, so they can see it. You know, then we could link to YouTube's on our website possibly, and then just say, hey, that was number whatever. Let's go there and see what it is.
Then you could have the same QR across all the cars for the website.
Yeah, yeah.
But could it be a big enough QR to get it at a distance? Would that work?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, with cameras today, they can collect your fingerprints.
Al, you want to start putting a group together and send out a query to the club and see if anybody wants to work with you? I'd be willing to help out too. I don't want to be in charge, obviously.
Yes, thank you. I will do that. I may have to call you to ask you how to put a query out, but I'll get on the website and see if I can figure it out.
Oh, it's very easy. You just send an email out. Oh, you can't do that. You can send one out to NBEAA-discuss. Tell you what, yeah, write it up and I'll forward it out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thanks.
I'll send it out from NBEAA 2019 so that you never respond. Good. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for listening and your ideas.
On to the news. Alan.
Yes.
Sent this one in. Yep.
Did we not mention this last time? Well, maybe I'm confusing it, but this is sort of big news as far as I'm concerned. Nissan has adopted the CCS system for charging, for fast charging. So I have to think that the CHAdeMO will be around a while, but it's going to fade away. So that is, my opinion, is good. One step toward coming up with a common standard.
And when you sent this to me, I went and read the article, and then I did a little more digging as well. This is only in the U.S. and or North America and Europe. And it's probably going to keep making CHAdeMO in Japan. And I never knew where CHAdeMO came from, but this is what it said it was, and translated as, how about a cup of tea while charging?
That's right. That is it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but also, the Japanese have been partnering with the Chinese for a common standard in China, which, given the way things have been going this year with relations with China, will probably stick in China. So that's going to be a separate system for a while.
And I remember when I got my 2011, I ordered mine kind of sight unseen and picked it up. At the time, we were guaranteed that if we wanted it to be with a CCS, that they would convert the original 2011s to CCS for you. I don't think anybody ever did that because the CCS standard didn't get approved until at least 2 years after that. So, and the CHAdeMO is bidirectional so far, and most of the ones that are offered so far. I think the standard for the CCS for two-way has just been approved. Does anybody else know for sure?
I know it was in the process, but where it's at is not 100% sure.
Okay. And then the other number that was here was, the number of CCS versus the number of CHAdeMO there's more CCS stations than there are CHAdeMO in North America right now, and quite a few more outlets. That was the other thing I saw. I didn't realize that CHAdeMO is usually 50 kilowatts, and there appeared to be a limit of 100 kilowatts on the CHAdeMO. But also, the article didn't say on the Japanese ARIA whether that would be over 100 kilowatts. So. Alan, you sent this one in too.
Yeah, there's a company that's called Evercharge that has what appeared to me to be a fairly complicated, not from a user viewpoint, but from the system viewpoint, system to charge several EVs, as an example, in an apartment parking area. And it would balance the needs of the charging, balance the energy requirements or the power requirements of the complex. So it seems like a step in the right direction for what is probably, in my opinion at least, the major hurdle to home charging for EVs. So nice system. It sounds like it anyway.
The other thing that occurred to me when I saw this, actually what they were talking about was with 150 amps supporting 20 chargers, which is pretty substantial that they're distributing like that. When Caleb and I were working for Motive, and I forgot the name of the company now, there was a company that was working with Clipper Creek that knew about the internals on the Clipper Creek, and they would actually read the current coming off of each one of the charge stations, and then send instructions to the charge station by knowing the characteristics of the vehicles that were plugged in to balance them so that with a relatively small circuit that they could balance, for instance, for a truck fleet, so that everything would be charged overnight because the profile is different on different places. Or at the very least, each one knew what route they could get done. So there are other companies working on this as well. The biggest thing,
Jerry, there's one thing I forgot that was in this article. They did not guarantee that everybody in the system would get a full charge.
Right.
But that they would get enough for the typical commute the next day.
That's
at
right.
least that much.
Yeah, that was part of what these guys were doing. I think we're out of Georgia. There's just one developer doing it in software, but he recognized how far they went on each day because they were a fleet, they were doing deliveries, and they had routes and stuff like that. But one of the other things that I was going to just point out, and it's the last thing here, these guys avoided a $50,000 utility upgrade. One of the customers for Motive was talking about a fleet in Fresno. Their utility upgrade going into a factory, which is a heavy duty factory, their utility upgrade for their vehicles was $250,000 from PG&E. So they're trying to find a way to avoid that. So this is actually, fairly important stuff as people start working on this. Yeah, the car's been in the garage quite a bit, but I've flown quite a bit lately. So I've been doing more transportation in the plane. So here's another flying one. This one is from the Texas Aircraft Manufacturing, which I think is in Brazil now. They're taking one of their lightweight aircraft, and it's been converted to an EV. It's a two-seater, 2 hours, 200 nautical miles. That's about 230 miles on a 90 kilowatt battery. And they're using lithium sulfur batteries. So I started looking up lithium sulfur to see what I could learn about lithium sulfur. It's an interesting chemistry, and I'm not sure what the issues have been with it other than perhaps life on it, but this is longer life, lower cost. Their cost is about $250 per kilowatt hour, which is a little bit high these days. But they're at 400 watt hours per kilogram, and they were targeting 600 watt hours per kilogram. That's pretty light. And by Aerospace is using the same battery. This one, Alan, you sent in as well, and I've seen this now in the news in about 5 different places. You want to talk about it? Are you there? Oh, you sent it in, Sonja? Oh,
Alan's on mute.
Okay,
Alan's
sorry.
on mute. Okay.
Sorry, I forgot. I need to train myself on that. Finally, GM has seen the light about the connection between EV sales and charging availability. So they have gone in partnership with EVgo to install chargers. And to me, this is all good news. I don't know why they resisted for so long, but it's a good sign. You know, people should be able to see the results, you know, online about how fast they've been installing them, and you know, good news for road trips.
And that's only 5 years from now. And later in the article, when they're talking about by 2030, more than doubling the number again. So it is pretty interesting.
You know, I did notice that the number of charging station locations that EVgo has is about comparable to Tesla, but the number of actual positions that they have to charge at is completely different.
Yeah. Every time I've gone with my friends to one of the Tesla stations, I don't think I've ever run into a Tesla station with less than 4, you know, charge heads. Alan, did you send this one in too?
I did. I just thought it would be nice for people to see this. To be honest with you, I don't think either of them are going to be real popular in this country. This is Candy is a Chinese company. When the K27, the smaller or whatever, the less expensive of the two, could be at a cost of $13,000 after rebates. However, it's only a 100-mile range and a top speed of 63 miles an hour. The larger of the two, the K23, has a reasonably sized battery, reasonably sized range, but a top speed of 70 again, and a price after rebates, I believe was 23.
23, that's right.
Yeah. So just compared to other cars that are coming out, it might be popular for some people who, as an example, the K23 could be appealing to people that aren't, you know, road trip type people that just stay around their county or something, possibly. But
the K27 might be popular because the number of people now starting to look for used EVs and willing to pay 13 or 12 or whatever for a used one. Here's a new vehicle that's a target for driving around town. And those used EVs, I saw people buying them with 80-mile range, 60-mile range, because they just wanted to drive around town.
Well, that's what it would be limited to, that's for sure.
I picked this one up out of my alumni newsletter. Unfortunately, I couldn't get this part over here to animate. I just thought it was interesting. Carnegie Mellon's had a robotics institute now for 35 years, 40 years. When I was a student there, Newell and Simon were there doing AI, and people didn't know what AI was at the time. My dad had introduced me to them. And what I thought was interesting about this was their approach for driving on the road and learning on the road. They're actually, in some cases, they put this in the vehicle, but other cases, they're just filming going down. And what they do is take their algorithm and have their algorithm project where a bike will be, or where a pedestrian will be, or where a car will be, based on what it was seeing before. And they're using LiDAR to pick up the data, so they get fairly precise data. Then they backcast and say, how was our prediction? And then the software takes that and says, okay, I need to change myself this way. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek Voyager, and the Doctor does a lot of that. So I think they got this from Star Trek Voyager in order to improve it. Anyway, it turns out that when they started with an accuracy of 25%, after increasing the data set that was used, the program made itself 46% efficient. So the programmers made it 25% accurate, and the program itself made itself 46% accurate. I thought that was pretty cool.
So Jerry, it's basically looking at traffic patterns of pedestrians and bikes in terms of where you would normally see them flowing from.
Yeah, what it's actually doing is this. I believe, the way I read the article, they're driving on roads and filming and recording everything. And what they're looking at is where it is determined people are. And then it forecasts where they will be. And then it looks at where they are at the time that they forecast where they would be. And then the program changes itself so that it's more accurate, so that their would be better. Does that make any sense at all?
I have to tell you, that's one thing I don't understand about Tesla's autopilot. If you're driving down, say, a highway, like I go down to Cary from Sebastopol on 116 there, and if a car turns left in front of you, a quarter of a mile up there, I totally understand it recognizing a potential problem, but why can't it say, okay, it's moving at a rate of 20 feet per second, whatever it is, and my car is not going to get there for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever it is. So it's not an issue, but it still it will put on the brakes hard. Well, I don't know about brakes, but regen system anyway, hard when it sees that car in the lane. And I don't understand why they can't just say, okay, it's going to be safe. Or if it stops in the middle of the lane, sure, then put on the brakes.
So essentially, that's what this algorithm is doing. The algorithm is saying, oh, I thought it was going to be in my way. It's not in my way. Maybe I could do this instead.
Yeah. To me, that's not a difficult thing to do, but it must be. Maybe I'm missing the point here.
I have a Tesla question for you, Tesla drivers. My car, I think, does not do this, and I don't understand why. It's self-driving, right? It's staying in the lane, and then we get a tighter curve, and its algorithm won't let it turn that tight, and so it's going to work its way out of the lane, and it warns me ahead of time that I have to take over to turn the steering wheel. It seems to me, why can't they just use an accelerometer and say, oh, we're pulling this number of G's. That's too many G's, so I need to slow down.
But by the time it gets to that point, it's too late. If your sideways acceleration is too late, then
John and I both fly airplanes, and if we can't hold a 60-degree bank in a tight turn, you don't pull back on the stick. You loosen up the bank first, then you pull up on the stick, and then you bank back out again. You can do it fairly quickly. I don't understand why a car can't do it.
I know that over time Teslas have taken more sharp curves. When earlier on they would do the same thing where it'd be like, this is too steep or too sharp, you need to take over.
Yeah.
And I know that there also are regulations, at least in Europe, about how sharply a car can turn. So that could also be impacting that.
Although I have to admit one thing in the Tesla in the 3, when we were coming out of Yosemite, there's this one white line as you're going down the road, and I think the Tesla turned really sharply to take us into the oncoming traffic. So that's a little annoying.
I just, about this slide, the thing that comes to my mind is, you know, as we get more electric vehicles on the road that are self-driving or have self-driving capabilities, wouldn't it be great to be able to integrate all of that into this kind of data set so that you have, you know, all the cars on the road sharing their information so that you know what's there in real time?
And the odds these CMU guys are doing exactly that. They don't care which manufacturer.
Right.
Caleb, were you saying something?
Yeah, just to be hard pressed for somebody to give away the proprietary information. You spend all this money and years developing it, until you get to, I don't know what point you say, okay, now everybody can use it.
Yeah.
What point for a for-profit business would want to do that?
Well, when they can license it, I guess that would be their goal.
Yeah.
I saw a video update of Tesla's autopilot in specific reference to their ability to take turns and predict turns. It was interesting because they, I think it was you, Cecilia, that was saying that, you know, they used to slow down or it used to have issues where it would go out of its lane because it was too sharp. And what they've done is they've actually been able to extend their predictive curve lines by a significant amount based on, you know, updates to how they interpret their sensor data, so that rather than getting to the curve and realizing that it's too sharp or too you know, too much of a lateral movement for the car, it actually has extended it out to, you know, a significant enough distance where it knows what it's going to be, and so it is more proactive. Whereas I think with the Leaf system, it's still very much a reactive system. It's like, oh, there's a line 5 feet in front of me, I better keep on it.
Yeah,
and then it continues to do that. Where the, you know, the predictive analysis that they're doing in the Tesla system looks much further ahead and is much better at predicting it.
Are they using the map or are they using vision?
They use both, but primarily vision, which is interesting. The video was, I'll see if I can find it and send it out, but the video is pretty interesting to see what they've done to kind of clean up their curve management, if you will, even around blind curves.
Now, do they have any ability to remember if you're on a certain route over and over again? And like I know coming south on 101 in Healdsburg, where one of the on-ramps, the lines are pretty far apart, but funny lines in there, and the car freaks out when I'm in autopilot. And so once it go over really far and then there's another line popped up and it tries to lane center again, and then it'll shut off. If there's any way or information whether Tesla's going to say, okay, no, we can predict this because you've been over this route so many times.
Right. I know that I think the base methodology that they use is to not try to do that because things change. Whereas like the Google or Waymo system based a lot of its predictive driving dynamics on memory and input of data of existing hardware and structure and road position. And Tesla has historically been resistant to doing that because they want to be dynamic and not have, you know, that potential of an issue where, oh yeah, I remember there was a road here and all of a sudden now that, you know, the night crews come through and they've diverted it around, you know, it's like maybe there's no lines yet and all of a sudden you're running through a construction site. Yeah. But they've been resistant to that in the past. I haven't kept up on it, to be honest, so I'm not sure how they, you know, how much they input today, but that was the basis of the kind of those two different technologies before.
Stan, have you been tempted to go out and restripe?
Just hold a brush out the window and go, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Alan, you sent the report in also, didn't you?
Right, I did. It's not showing up. Let me get to it on this here. Okay, so the Sonoma County Regional Climate Protection Authority has published a breakdown of where our greenhouse gases are coming from in this county. As you can see in this one chart here that, let's see here, I'll go back. The amount of greenhouse gases contributed from transportation went down up until about 2015. Now it's slightly going back up. And that's on an absolute amount. As a percentage of the total, it's increased to 60%. And as you can see, buildings are getting more efficient. The fertilizer and livestock, that's increasing a little bit as well. And since 2015, solid waste has stayed about the same. So, boy, you know, again, this is up until 2018. I would hope that with a lot more selection of electric vehicles, this transportation amount, the absolute amount, would start going down. So we'll see. But that's the way it stands in 2018, at least.
You know, our CPA has been putting up the new plan and has been very active and engaging and have webinars trying to get ideas from everybody on what they should focus on. It's funny because a lot of it turned out not to be transportation when people jump in. They spend more time talking about other things, and it is the larger portion here. Silicon Valley, transportation is only about 42%. So, you know.
Well, but see, the thing about it is, that's why I wanted to make sure that we had that the chart that's on the right up there.
Yeah.
The percentage is sort of interesting, but the absolute amount is what's really important.
Right, right. And you know, so the other thing from that report was that Sonoma Clean Power was a major impact. I'd be interested in what happens to Silicon Valley since Silicon Valley Clean Energy initiated about a year and a half ago. So,
I think it's worth noting that the methodology that the NBEAA uses to make these statistics come under a lot of criticism over the years.
Yeah.
Because
hey, Ellen, can you mute? Because you got the wind blowing on you.
The methodology they've used to make this chart is taken a lot of criticism, in fact, even lawsuits, which have caused a lot of disruption over the years, because the important question of whether or not an specific activity should only be counted as emitting greenhouse gases if it's done in the county, as opposed to those activities or actions that create greenhouse gases outside of the county, even though the action is inside. For example, buildings use natural gas, and rather than include the inventories of emissions coming from fracking, pipelines, and so on, the RCPA previously only considered the amount of emissions within the county rather than upstream around the other places. So I take all these charts about absolute amounts and what it is with a big grain of salt, because the science, I mean, for example, the Worldwide Carbon Network, the carbon tracking network of scientists, stated that in 2019, the largest contributor to increased greenhouse gases was natural gas emissions. And oil was 2.6% increase in GHGs, while oil itself was 0.9% increase, and coal had dropped something like 0.9%. So, you know, these are really, there are huge policy debates around this that should be.
I was unaware of that, Andy, and I agree that they should be able to take the amount of BTUs from natural gas and apply their overall greenhouse gas emissions to those BTUs. Why it would be just in Sonoma County doesn't make sense to me.
I'll just mention that I think that the I think our CPA uses consulting firms to do this for them, to do the actual calculations. And some of I've had run-ins with those consulting firms over their methodologies, and I have never been really satisfied with that they're doing it right.
But again, what you're saying, again, I agree with it, but still, that may increase, as an example, the amount of greenhouse gases in the building, and which would decrease the amount of transportation greenhouse gases. But it's still, you have that absolute value of the greenhouse gases from transportation. I can't imagine that the building would exceed transportation if you included the downstream GHGs from natural gas. So we still need to get to work on the transportation in Sonoma County.
There's no doubt that transportation, it all has to be worked on.
Right.
That isn't an argument for that. I'm just talking about the relative amounts and
right.
The total absolute amounts have to be.
The methodology as well.
Yeah, the methodology is suspect.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
On this next slide, John Pomerley sent this one in, and it's interesting. I won't let you talk to it, John, because we had listed for a long time. It would be great to have a presentation to find all of the different values that people have quoted. Basically, the concept is that they use electricity in order to distill oil to make gasoline. And the quotes are any place from half a kilowatt hour up to 12 kilowatt hours. And I'd like to know how it's calculated. This one actually came from the industry itself, I think. 6 kilowatt hours is used to produce 1 gallon of gasoline. And there's a little video here, which I thought I would share, which would be more fun. Just 1 second here. Share. And let's go share.
Let's go, let's go.
A frequent and perfectly valid criticism about electric cars is that the power used to charge them comes from the national grid. We generate a lot of electricity by burning coal and gas. Burning coal is the dirtiest way of making electricity. Everyone knows that. No one disputes it except the Koch brothers in America, but they should be ignored as much as possible. It's one of the arguments Mr. Clarkson always cites. "This is a coal-powered car," he says as he drives a Nissan Leaf. True, you can power electric cars from any kind of electricity, but between 30 and 40% of our electricity still comes from coal and gas. So is Mr. Clarkson correct? Sort of. One of the facts that is never mentioned by car manufacturers, the oil industry, the current government, and indeed Mr. Clarkson, is that we use a bit of electricity to refine crude oil. In fact, quite a lot of electricity. Okay, so much electricity that the oil industry has gone to great lengths to keep the figures out of the public domain. They no longer release the figures, but they did up until 2005. Thankfully, these figures were recorded by the United Nations Statistics Division. Now, it's important to point out that the refining process doesn't only produce petrol, diesel and jet fuel. It also produces tons of hydrogen and a myriad of gases and chemicals used in fertilizers, pharmaceuticals and plastics. When I visited an oil refinery to make an episode of Channel 5's How Do They Do It series, I noticed this huge substation next to the car park when I arrived. Here's an illustration of the thickness of my brain. I said to the camera crew, "I didn't know refining oil generated electricity." I was later disabused of this notion when the head of engineering at the refinery explained proudly that we use more electricity in a year than Coventry and Leicester combined. Yes, that's quite a lot of electricity. But how much, I hear you ask? Well, hang on a minute. Very importantly, these big UK refineries use so much electricity that they have their own dedicated feed from the nearest power station. In all three cases, the nearest power stations are coal-powered, so they are using the dirtiest form of electricity to refine the dirtiest form of fuel. No critic of electric cars ever mentions this rather glaring fact. In 2005, the most recent year that figures are available, the three big refineries in the UK used 5,600 gigawatt hours of electricity to refine oil. That's 5.5 billion kilowatt hours. The best guess of the amount of electricity needed to refine 1 gallon of petrol is somewhere around 4.5 kilowatt hours. That electricity has to come from somewhere. Just to put the figures into some sort of context, 5.5 billion kilowatt hours is enough to charge over 23 million electric cars to drive just short of 20 trillion miles. As Elon Musk of Tesla Motors said, we'd have plenty of electricity to power electric cars if we just stopped refining oil. So when it says 120 grams of CO2 per kilometre in the car advert, just remember there's been a little bit of CO2 produced before we get to the forecourt pump.
Let's go, let's go.
I hope you all heard the sound as well. Did the sound work okay?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yes.
Good, good, good. Yeah, Ray helped me out with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're all muted, but we heard the sound.
All right. Anything we've done a lot of peanut gallery already. Anything else that anybody wants to pipe in on?
Well, I just wanted to say on that last slide, the link at the bottom is to that paper that I talked about, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the one, I mean, I recommend people look at that because that's got a lot of answers. I mean, it doesn't get a definitive answer, but it represents why there's so many ways of interpreting this, what might seem to be simple data, you know, because on some refineries, they'll use a certain percentage of the actual crude oil that comes in for heating instead of using electricity. You know, there's just all different ways that it's done, so.
I have to admit that I haven't complained about the amount of time it takes me to put the deck together, because when you guys send the articles in and I start reading them and I start looking into all of these things, it's fascinating all the stuff that you can learn. You know, so it's an exercise which I pretty much enjoyed. One of the articles which I did not include was one because it's not electric. And it had to do with aviation. And I know a lot of people have been down on aviation, but the first of the deliveries now of renewable fuels, liquid fuels, diesel, have been delivered to San Francisco. And in fact, they're delivered on a ship from Texas, where it's made from plant material and animal fats. And it's shipped on the container ship, not container ship, whatever, a tanker. But the tanker is actually fueled by the renewable fuel as well. And so San Francisco Airport now has a whole fueling dump of renewable fuels for their jet aircraft. They'll be stepping that up further and further. But that's the first in one of the major airports.
You mentioned animal fats. Is that, wouldn't have considered that a renewable element.
Yeah, but that's kind of interesting because you could kill the animals and then renew them. It's a renewable element for this reason. I always think of things as, it may not be ethical, it's renewable. The reason is it's using the energy from the sun, and that's our definition these days. You need to know the sun's not necessarily renewable, but you're using the energy budget that is being sent to the Earth each year, as opposed to the budget that was sent to the Earth millions of years ago that got stored up.
So, Jerry, this is David Harris. The other way to look at it is the fact that the carbon that's there came out of the atmosphere, not out of the, you know, the
ground.
fossil source.
Yeah.
That's really the thing that the energy out comes from the sun, but where'd the carbon come from?
Yeah.
And related to this last video, that was UK based, but does anybody have a number for the electricity per gallon in California for gallon of gasoline?
I think, John, that a lot of that's covered in that article. There is a lot of controversy as to what the number really is and what to include.
And Jerry, about that fuel thing, I'm still waiting to hear anybody doing research on the and maybe this is happening, but the idea of taking CO2 from the atmosphere and hydrogen from water, and finding a way to combine that to create hydrocarbons directly.
Anyway. There is research, and I did read about it recently. And the problem is it's expensive, and the energy profile is not right yet. And part of it is getting the hydrogen out too. So and Stanford's done a lot of work on that, this stuff as well. I was going to mention something else that came up from that as well. I lost it. Okay.
Okay, I have one question for the group. Recently I got a letter from PG&E saying that my rate plan was going to change. And so I went to the site and looked at it, and it looked like there are quite a few rate plans now. I think there are 4 of them that they presented to me. Mine is the EV2 plan, so I would have hoped that it would have been the most economical plan for me, but it's not, according to what I'm looking at. There are a couple of time of use plans that look like they might actually be better. But I'm confused. I don't know what's going on here and whether I should change my rate plan or not.
You don't have to change, Lowell, because you have an EV, but you also have solar panels. I don't have solar panels, and so I had to change to EV2A. The difference between those two, and you should look into it. I believe that your EV2 for you, because you have solar panels, from an economic point of view, is more beneficial because you're selling power back to PG&E at the time when the rate is the highest. If you go to EV2A, the time period shifts. In fact, the peak period moves from like 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 6 p.m. or something like that. It moves to 4 p.m. until I think it's 7 p.m. or something like that, or 8 p.m. Or even 11 p.m. So it's during the time that you're using electricity is when the peak period comes in. Those of us who just have an EV without the solar panels, on the other hand, did not have the option. In November, we were all switched to EV2A, which from just having an EV with no solar panels, that is a good one because the peak period is fairly short and the off-peak is from midnight until 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Right. That's what I'm getting. I mean, but what I know is the underlying rates. I mean, the other 2 time of use plans have similar hours, but what are they charging? What is are they changing the amount from the amount per kilowatt hour now that they're making these changes? I haven't looked at my PG&E.
The amount per kilowatt hour, as far as I know, has not changed for peak, off-peak, and partial peak. What changed is what the hours are. And for you with solar panels, you might want to keep this. I think you can only keep it until 2023.
All right.
After that, you'll be forced off anyway. That's part of the retirement in order to address economically the duck curve.
Right. Okay, well then I'll stick with what I got.
I must say that if you go into the PG&E and you look up their energy use and energy cost, you can look it up by day and you can look it up by hour. It's very, very nice way to look at that. And you can kind of get a sense then too of what you did last year versus this year. So that's a nice tool.
Yeah, I visited that. It's pretty cool. Okay.
All right, Sonja, you are up.
All right. So I wanted to preface this with a little nod to Alan, who has driven around the world, and Cecilia, who's done 11,000 miles recently. This is kind of the anti-long trip. It's kind of like, hey, if you could take a trip, you know, that's 400 something miles away, and plan the very least, perhaps not even plan at all, and have it all work out well. You know, I'd love to say that this would be true for, you know, any EV you hop into, but I kind of focused in on Tesla for this one. So yeah, we went up to Oregon. The last time I've been in Oregon was back in 2006 when I was driving this beauty around. You know, it's a 4-cylinder. It was very efficient, and it wasn't exactly the most COVID compatible camper. I think, you know, Alan, where you were talking about like a Model Y with a trailer, COVID made me think really differently about camping. You know, you'd be able to really be physically distant if you have a bathroom and you can kind of do your own cooking. Those were the things that I thought would give us, you know, the most physical distance during the course of a multi-day trip. But, you know, anyway, even though we didn't have an EV, you know, we headed up there mostly because it took us quite a while to get a reservation at Crater Lake Lodge. And, you know, they were doing some things there that we felt like, you know, we were somewhat comfortable taking a couple of nights there. So the trip that we took 2 days to go up. So we went from Sebastopol to Mount Shasta and stayed overnight in Mount Shasta, and then went on to Crater Lake. And then we just kind of, you know, in order to minimize our exposure, we just kind of drove all the way back, which is about 9 hours with charging from Crater Lake to Sebastopol. So tiny bit bigger than an LA trip, but not much, and pretty relaxing driving. So basically, here's the planning that I did. I was like, can we make it there in the car reasonably? We didn't have a lot of time constraints. And I was just thinking, like, you know, how many chargers do we have as a choice? And I saw that there were, you know, 6 or 7 choices of chargers going up and back. And I did a little planning on a Better Route Planner without even signing in. I just kind of went in, and a Better Route Planner is an app that you can download. And I appreciate that what you don't get out of a Tesla is like the ability to kind of think a month in advance, like, what is this going to look like? You can go to tesla.com, which I'll show you in a second, but, you know, with a Better Route Planner, it kind of gives you a little bit more detail where you can pick your car and your battery, set up a little bit of preference around how low you want your battery to drain down to, and how high you want your battery to be charged to at the beginning. And that gave me just enough confidence that I thought, you know, there's no real need to plan too much to get there. So I also checked it out after the fact on tesla.com/trips, which I found was a pretty easy way. If you go back to the Tesla one, Jerry,
yeah.
I found was no worries. I found it was kind of an easy way to kind of look at the charging. This is not exactly accurate for my car because they don't have a Model 3 Standard Range Plus or mid-range or anything smaller than the long range. And kind of shows me that Tesla doesn't really care about your planning. You know, they know that they give you good information in the moment, and that's probably all that matters if they've got a good supercharger network. But, you know, they haven't even bothered to keep this fully up to date. So I guessed, you know, hey, yeah, it looks like it could work out that you could get up into Mount Shasta and then up to Crater Lake. So what we actually did was we hit a couple of charging stations on the way up, and this was kind of the source of this conversation that I thought might be interesting, was that each of the planning apps and also the car in the moment kind of suggested very short charges of 20 minutes or less multiple times. And I had no idea why it was kind of setting it up that way. And I kind of looked to see, was there a big gap between a couple of the charging stations that made it, kind of forced it into that or not? And there wasn't. So we ended up not charging quite as much as it originally suggested. But, I thought it could have been that sometimes, and Alan can probably, a couple of Tesla drivers can probably comment on this, that if there is like kind of a higher supercharger, like a 150 kW supercharger, it might be kind of preferring that you stop at a couple of the fastest superchargers to try to minimize the total minutes of your trip. But it does a couple funny things, and I'll stop here if anyone knows a little bit about, why it's kind of pushing you in the direction of short.
I haven't studied it in detail, but the way I understand it, they minimize the amount of time you're plugged into the charger. What it doesn't take into account is the amount of time it takes you to get off the highway to the charger. So that needs to be considered in your overall planning if you really want to minimize the amount of time charging. A friend of mine just sent me his plans to go up to the Seattle area, and he spent a lot of time to save 3 minutes in his charging time.
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay, whatever turns you on, but that's all. To me, I don't know. I personally just try and keep it so that I don't go below 10%, and if that means stopping when I'm at fairly high 40%, well, that's okay. But there are so many superchargers, I find you don't need to do that. You can go quite a distance between charging.
That's helpful. I think the takeaway is that you'll get some suggestions about where to charge and how far, how long to charge at each point. And usually they're underdoing it so that it's like, oh, you're going to get to the next station at 12% or something like that. But the bottom line was, it's much more fun to kind of pick the spot that coincides with your lunch break or has a more interesting and unusual kind of landscape or place to eat or something, and it's kind of a luxury and a fun thing to say, okay, there's actually like 3 or 4 spots and you only have to hit 2/3 of them to get there. So on the way up, if you read this screen from the bottom to the top, on the way up, we hit Corning from Sebastopol and charged for, $10.92, probably represents 35 minutes or so. And then we got to Mount Shasta, which was actually where we wanted to be for that night, and charged at their superchargers there. And then Klamath Falls is actually not very far from Crater Lake, but it's the good jumping off point. So we hit that in both directions. So really, not too much going on here in terms of having to stop and charge. A couple of these are farther away from the freeway. And so there's 2 things that you don't get to know when you look at the Tesla supercharger information. One is aesthetics, and sometimes you have amenities, but you don't quite have the aesthetics. And then the other is, really like, how inconvenient is it? Like, you can kind of see how far away it is, but you don't necessarily know how, what that experience is going to be quite like. And the mystery's fun, but I started to think about like, yeah, a couple of these things would be really helpful, especially for all of us who like these short trips pretty close by, you know. So I gave you guys my little amenities list. In Corning, not so great, I'd say. They have a little Starbucks and an Olive Pit. There's no shade, you know, it's 100 degrees. There aren't too many charging stations there. I think there were 4 or 6. It worked out fine. We actually had like a really gourmet lunch planned and stuff like that. So, you know, all that worked fine. But if you had an alternative, Williams was pretty interesting. It has this like very funky old world Italian deli, Granzella's, and Granzella's just like owns the whole town. They've got like a banquet hall and a restaurant takeout and some picnic tables. And the picture here is the Granzella's parking lot. It has, you know, this is a springtime picture I grabbed off the internet, but a lot of people stop here. Just behind the Tesla superchargers, all the trucks and RVs pull in back there, and everyone goes to Granzella's and grabs Italian sandwiches and things like that.
When you talk about the heat, having traveled with my friend Raj and his 3, one of the things that I found obnoxious about the Tesla was the glass roof. Does anybody make a shade cloth for the outside of the car when you park? Because that roof gets hot and then it stays hot for 25 minutes, even if you have the air conditioning blasting inside the car.
They make one for the inside.
For the inside,
Yeah,
yeah.
you need it for the outside.
Well,
you need it for the outside for when you park, because that glass just absorbs heat.
That's funny. I just saw, you know, someone who was parked for the farmer's market in Sebastopol had a blanket over their entire truck for the morning. And I wasn't sure if they, you know, had a reason to keep it that shady. Maybe they had let us inside or something. Yeah, you know, I guess it gets breezy enough that maybe the outside just doesn't make sense, but they have a reflective version on the inside. And I'd say for the first time, I was kind of aware of the that radiating heat on the top.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we went out to Yosemite, I noticed that, and because we were parked for 6-7 hours, and it was out in the sun, and then we started driving back to the hotel, and Raj has the air conditioner on full blast, got the windows open, everything else. We've got about 15 miles before the roof stopped blasting heat at us.
I'm just waiting for the solar glass retrofits to come through. You know, I assume that they're a glass roof for a reason. Basically, I'd say let me just say that also, because going to Crater Lake really involves stopping at Klamath Falls, there's a Fred Meyer's there. It's not very great, and also it's really far off of the main highway, so you're kind of, you know, pulling through town for quite a few blocks, and it's taking you quite a while. But I don't know that there's too much alternative, so you got to kind of do a little bit of Klamath Falls on the way in and out to do this Crater Lake trip. And then up at Crater Lake, there's a lodge, there's a bunch of camping. It's a really nice spot. There's an entrance point to the national park at Annie's Creek, and it has a couple of level 2 a Tesla and J1772 plug right there. And even though they're level 2, it actually has a beautiful hike right adjacent to it, and also a place where you can get food. So it's likely that you will show up with quite a bit of battery if you kind of, you know, charge in Klamath Falls, but you can also get a little bit more power up at Annie's Creek. I had kind of forgotten, but you know, when you're in a national park, things are a little different and you don't have a lot of options. I don't know what it's like if they have some RV sites that are options. I didn't look into that. But there's a really nice road that goes all the way around the lake, and it's just, built for fun driving. Some of it's on really steep hillsides. And so going up there with a certain amount of power so that you can take some drives around is helpful. But then you basically don't use anything getting back to Klamath Falls because you're just regenerating the whole way back. So I was surprised. Like, I think that the Tesla does a pretty good job with estimating elevation changes. I hadn't noticed that before, like going to LA and going over the Grapevine and things like that, but it does a pretty good job of being pretty accurate. So you don't have to think really hard about, losing a bunch of power.
I agree. When I was going up to Yosemite, the Tesla seemed to know that I was going to climb from Oakhurst to the park entrance and then go downhill from there. So it basically it took that into account, and when it was estimating, whether I was going to get there and how much I'd have when I got there, and it was pretty much right. I actually find that oftentimes it is pessimistic. I actually wind up having more battery when I arrive than it said I would. Another issue, there's something that I faced when I drove down to California in December. I did Southern California in December, and that's something that's not happening right now because people aren't traveling that much. But some of the charging stations, particularly at that time of the year, were full, and so part of the planning was can I get to a station that doesn't seem to have as much traffic as this other station, and that will save me time because I won't have to wait in line to get my charge. And so we started doing that on the way back. Sometimes your options are limited, so you don't have much choice. But if you're on something like the I-5, you do have quite a few choices. So you put your finger on the charging station that shows you how many of the chargers are occupied, and if they're all occupied, you can say, well, maybe I'll just see if I can get to the next one, and do it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know where I was going to cover this, but I asked Jason's colleague Mike about what he thinks of it as like the very perfect size battery, and he reminded me that if you're in cold weather, you're going to feel a little differently about how you plan for your range. And then also what I recall from going to LA at Christmas was that it was pretty much the only time I've ever had to care about whether there was going to be a spot for me at a Tesla supercharger and whether that was going to slow me down. And we always got the second to last or the last spot available. And I never had to wait, but I saw people waiting. So it was like that tight, people would pull in right after me. And speaking of donuts, I think there were donuts available. Like there were like Tesla people hanging out, handing out donuts and keeping people happy.
Yeah. When we were on the way back on Christmas, the Grapevine was closed with a tremendous big storm. So we had to go on 101, and everybody had to go on one. And we got to the charging station, I forget where it was, but it was the one we absolutely had to go to. And there was an enormous line. There were about, 10 or 12 Teslas lined up. We had to stand in line for over an hour. And there was a guy with food, bringing us coffee, apologizing for the wait, with a Tesla shirt on, of course. And so it was kind of nice in terms of kind of getting out there and talking to people, but it definitely took a big hunk out of our planned arrival time.
I got caught in that too. I went up to Santa Barbara on 101, and it was when the Grapevine was closed, and it took like 5 hours to get from LA to Santa Barbara or something.
Yeah, that was horrible. That was amazingly bad traffic. Yeah.
But little did we know it was. In retrospect, I'm so appreciative that I could hang out with people at that point in my life.
Yes, I know. What would it be like now, right?
Yeah. So, this is kind of the open part of the debate is, as we have the opportunity to buy these new EVs with increasingly large battery sizes, it feels like there's got to be a point of diminishing return. And with a really ubiquitous supercharger kind of setup, to me, it feels like, gee, you could do so much with a 300-mile battery. I can think of a few places I'd like to go that don't have great supercharger setup, but this was kind of the question in my mind. And what I offer to you that is a little bit different from what we usually talk about is what's healthy for your body. You know, reducing long sedentary times is something that's really good for you. And so I got a little help in kind of doing some research on this, and found a study that an additional hour of total sedentary time is associated to a 12% higher risk of cardiovascular disease. And so I offer that up. I know a couple of people have said to me, I don't want an EV because I love to just drive through. And it's like, you know, the EV kind of pattern gives you a little chance to get out and stretch.
Yeah.
I think ideally, you know, every couple hours. So what do you guys think? If you had a chance to get a 500-mile battery, you know, would that be a little bit of overkill, or could you find a use for it?
I think that those of us who have some experience with road trips using EVs with decent sized batteries, like mine is 280 miles, and it seems like plenty to me. We know that it's okay. I mean that it's actually pleasant. But people who are driving cars right now that have gas tanks that allow them to drive 400, 450 miles are saying, well, why do I like that? I don't have to stop, you know, and get gas. I can drive, you know, back and forth to Yosemite or someplace like that and never go to a gas station. Why would I change to a car that, you know, didn't do that? So again, for us who are used to it, it's one thing, but to persuade more people to adopt electric vehicles, that's one of the major blocks for them, is that I'm going to get a car that can't go as far as my current car can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that, Lowell, is my oldest brother was making that very argument. Oh, I've got to have a 400-mile car because his typical trip to see his son in LA is that distance and so on. And I said, so you never stop on the way down? Oh, well, yeah, we always stop at Harris Ranch to get some lunch. I said, well, what's the deal here? You know, or you know, we have to stop to go to the restroom. But they can't, for some reason, people have a hard time connecting those two. It's a difficult concept to grasp, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I have a similar problem. I just blocked out a trip from Santa Rosa to Morristown, New Jersey in the plane. And I'm trying to talk myself into 2-hour stretches instead of 4-hour stretches so I can get there faster. In my case, it's not the recharge time, it's I have to land, then I have to take off, and I have to taxi around and all that. But you know, at my age, I get sore butt after 2 hours.
Right.
Well, I did see a guy in a Model X get out in Mount Shasta, and he was clearly uncomfortable. And I thought, you know, how long has he been driving? I mean, it could have been, you know, that it wasn't that long at all, but that's the downside of having the Model X or the Model S, is you might have to sit in it too long.
Yeah, Sonja, just to add to the benefit of having a longer range pack can also be looking at it from a technical perspective. The battery will last longer in your car if you have a larger pack. So it's just something interesting to think about. You know, you could add a 400-mile range pack versus a 200-mile range. Your long life of the pack, you'd have twice the pack life if you had the similar driving habits. But
you can see you have that down. She has that on her bullet, and unfortunately, I screwed up a slide on her.
Yeah, but So one thing that I don't understand is like if you kind of decided to keep it between 10 and 90, does the 400-mile pack last even longer with like kind of going from 10 to 90 because of the is there something that's like inherently better about a bigger pack?
Well, it's simpler than we're thinking. It's just that how many times do I do a charge?
Right.
You know, in a year. It's gonna, if you have similar driving habits, it'll be half as long. So if you have a certain number of charges for a pack, then you'll double it.
I mentioned it in the last session. The Stanford has a series called Storage X where they're talking about battery technology. And the last 3 sections have been on crystalline structure and the structure of the materials, et cetera. And what's interesting about it is you start to recognize why the 10% and the 90%, and in fact, other numbers, because what ends up happening is not just dendrites, the entire structure of the anodes and the cathodes start getting modified, and the places where the ions had to go start disappearing over time. And if you charge less, it doesn't drive the ions in so deeply, and it doesn't destroy the structure quite as rapidly, and that's why they last longer. There's a lot of research going on right now on this. It's Lowell's fault that I keep looking at all this stuff, because he said, well, great to have a presentation on batteries, so I got interested in batteries. And just looking at also the number of hours and the number of people doing the materials research, not just the chemistry research, but the materials research on how you process these things, how do you handle it, et cetera, in the last 15 years has increased by like 100-fold over what happened over the last 100 years. So it's amazing.
Well, I'd like to look at a second to something we were talking about earlier with charging stations. Isn't it true that the two stations, the A and the B next to each other at a Tesla charging, that share the same juice, and if you've got them both full at the same time, you can only charge half as fast?
I don't think it's half as fast. I had heard that there was some minor relationship between the two chargers, and that if you pull up to a supercharging station, you're better off moving further away from another car, so that you're not within kind of that paired power setup. But does anyone know it? I can't imagine it's like half as fast, because it always charges right up in a half hour or so.
And their stations are constantly being upgraded, so the half as fast might be twice as fast as what it was on Gen 2 or Gen 3 hardware. So they're always increasing the capacity of the stations, so to keep up with the cars.
That's the way it used to. That's the way it used to be. Used to be that way. I don't know if it still is, but that's definitely the correct. It's not half as fast, but it's slower.
I can speak to that. But I understand there are 4 chargers for each pair of supercharger stalls. If you're only on one of the pair, you get access to up to 4 of them, and as you taper down, you need fewer of them. So if a second person pulls in, they're only going to get access to 1, and as the other car ramps down, it'll start switching over the chargers to the other car. That's the case under V2. Under V3, that isn't the case.
Well, that also kind of reminds me that if you're charging between 20% and 80%, you're going to be charging at a faster rate, right? And so the Tesla had more recently implemented the battery conditioning mode prior to arriving at the supercharger. And so you're ramping up a little faster once you're there as well. It's amazing how many different little details can go into speeding you along on your way. And then, if you just have, you lose track of time, or you have a good sandwich and a couple other things to do, you're also just kind of like, oh yeah, I got to get back to my car. So, the attitude was very different on a holiday week versus, I don't know, when you're traveling with a couple of people who may not be as EV friendly, and you're trying to, you know, get from point A to point B, you're trying to be super efficient, that sort of thing. That's a really different type of traveling. It is nice to see on your Tesla app that you're charging at like 175 miles per hour or something.
I'd never noticed that on the lease before either, and I finally found it on the lease as well. You get to the right screen, it will show you how fast you're charging when you're on a quick charge.
And since I'm winding down the presentation, I noticed a couple things in the chat that are kind of worth mentioning. You know, Cecilia, you mentioned nowyouKnowchannel.com that has good reviews for superchargers. And then Al, you were mentioning Grey Eagle. That's the third time I've heard about Grey Eagle lately. I'm really curious about going up there next.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote it in the chat, but it's I go every year. I'm not going to go in my iPace because even though I have a way to use a Tesla destination charger, there's a way to use one of those on any car. I don't trust it enough. It depends on how they wired the destination charger for Tesla. So I'm not going to take that particular car, but I would recommend it. It's a great place. I mean, it's a wonderful place. It's just pricey, but they worked hard to make it COVID. They worked hard enough to convince me that I'm going to be okay. And I'm old. You may not be able to tell.
It is a great place. We used to go up there for years. Great golfing, great hiking, Plumas National Forest, bike riding. They have a little RV and trailer place you can go to as well.
Right, there's lots of campgrounds. Right, good point, good point. Lots of places to stay. Packer Lake Lodge, Sardine Lake, Gold Lake. Beautiful country.
Well, I have a couple bonus slides for you. I did a little thinking about camping in the future. I love the idea of luxury camping during this time. I love the idea of, you know, having a bathroom on board and a kitchen on board, and, you know, being able to not necessarily use public services when you're out and about. You know, just kind of looking at what's available. The upper right, the Model X with the trailer, that's not the future, that's now. So, you know, you could do something like that, but I don't know, you know, the hitch for the Model X is like a 5,000 pound hitch.
Right.
Has anyone done any pulling?
It is actually, I went through all that with my planning, and the Model X is 5,000 pound. The Model Y is 3,500 pounds. And I found, I had the same criteria as you did, Sonja, about having a kitchen and bathroom on board. And I found this, the trailer company is called Little Guys, and it's their Mini Max. And I tell you, it was perfect. I was ready to go. But I just didn't want to get caught out. My intent was to go all the way across the country and then down the East Coast and come back that way. And I was really looking forward to it, but it just, things got out of control, in my opinion, with this COVID stuff.
Maybe next
Alan, what did you estimate your range to be with one of your Little Guy trailers and a Model Y?
Yes. I didn't estimate.
He hasn't done it yet.
I didn't care. There are enough superchargers along there. Well, first of all, remember, I was going to be pulling into RV parks, so there was every morning I start out with a full charge. Just one charge during the day, even if it wasn't at a supercharger, you know, if I stop for lunch and there's a J1772, it would get me far enough to where I would get to the next RV park.
And you can make use of all those different cable adapters that you have.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, the RV parks are the NEMA 1450s. So, and I think those come with the car. At least they used to come with the Teslas.
Yeah, I think they're 99 now or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as somebody sees that this one's for sale, tell me, because that's my next car.
Which one? The bus?
The Volkswagen, the bus.
The
I
ID
mean,
bus.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking it's going to be pretty small scale. You know, like a mini minivan, and so you know, not your bathroom setup, but a really nice, you know, coastal car, I would think.
Yeah.
And then I would assume the same for like a Cybertruck or a Rivian or a Nikola, where you know that's a pretty small scale, but bigger than putting your Model 3 on camping mode.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the next question was just kind of like, when are you going to get to the point of having like a much more full scale, like a Sprinter, a Class B RV? And the next slide, you know, this is all old data, and who knows, you know, what's been prioritized more recently, because I didn't find anything much more recent, but, you know.
I was looking for an electric camper van, I guess you call them, something like that, whatever. And the only one I could find is the Mercedes, and that's only available in Europe.
Yeah.
So a bit of kind of industry information that's not really publicly distributed, but there's a leading RV manufacturer that has started testing all electric Sprinter size vans, and they started that about 6 months ago in the US. They anticipate a more public release within the next, say, 6 months to a year.
You mean beyond medical vehicles?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is going to be specifically for recreational camping and consumer purchase.
Do you know what range that they are planning on?
I don't know what they've actually been achieving. I believe their goals are in the 200-mile plus range at this point, but that, yeah, they still have a lot of testing to do.
Yeah, there is an example. Winnebago, I either has or had one, but it's only like 100-mile range or something.
Yeah.
So.
BMW batteries?
It's not actually.
No?
No. They've diversified a little bit.
Okay.
It's also not made out of salt.
It's also not made out of salt. Okay. I figured that much. I think they gave it on the salt.
As another alternative to the from the little guy, you know, a company that's been around for the better part of 40 or 50 years is like the Scamp fiberglass trailers, and there's a whole, you know, cult following on the fiberglass campers. But you can get a 16-foot bathroom, kitchen, sleeps 4+ people, and they weigh about 2,000 pounds. You know, so you know those are
writing it down.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. I thought I looked at those and didn't see one that met that criteria. Huh.
Yeah, even their 13-foot model has a bathroom and kitchen in it, but it's typically designed for like sleeping two. And that one's even lighter. I mean, you can get those under 2,000 pounds, even with all that.
Huh. Okay.
All right. That's it. Thank you, Sonja.
Yeah, thank you.
More stuff to read. There's the July meeting video. And there's an energy webinar series with Stanford. And so this was, yeah. So this video right here, when when you're talking about batteries burning, I think that's the video right there, that link right there. So I'll have that up on the web for you to get to.
Okay, which one are you talking about?
This one right here. I think that's, I believe that is, oh, here. This one right here, the Sonoma Clean Power presentation, but you can watch the whole video if you want to when they give the talk. The presentation is here, and the video of that presentation with, I think his name is Caldwell, giving the talk. And he's an independent researcher. he did a lot of his research on batteries by going down to Australia because it's such a deep install base there with different alternatives. And then I also looked at the Wall Street Journal review of the future of electric vehicles. It's 26 minutes. I found it somewhat disappointing. It was kind of a downer, but it was non-EV drivers at Wall Street reviewing EV technology, where they went ahead and were given cars to drive for a while, but then they, most of them tried to find problems with EVs, and I don't know, kind of bothered me a bit.
Did you send out those links as actual hyperlinks on a email so you don't have to try to copy that video off of your screenshot?
Oh, you don't have to copy the video. It's in the, look at every single, for the presentations, they're all on the club site, and I think you can link to those from the website if you need to. And the presentations are all there. And for every slide that we have, where we get the material from, there's a link on each slide, at least for the last year plus that I provided.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I mean, I can send it out as an email, but it's there, and I post them as PDFs, and the PDF links work. I test them, make sure they do. I'll have this one posted in the next 2 hours. I have to correct some errors I made in the slides. We don't have a presentation for next month. Sonja jumped in last minute and did this one. I had one laying around I did for somebody else that I did the previous month, but we need some ideas on presentations. There were lots of ideas people had supplied in the previous months, but some of it requires sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to spend a couple days and put one together. Andy, I know you've done that before, and others have done it before. So it'd be great if somebody steps up and said, hey, I want to present on such and such.
Has anybody done anything on electric boats?
I'd love to hear about Duffy's.
Yeah, and John, you guys did electric boats too, huh?
We do electric sailboats at Thunderstruck. I mean, I could put something together about that. We're selling tons of those kits.
Caleb, you have an electric boat now?
No, but there's a company up in Seattle called Pure Watercraft that's doing something. And I've been looking at, there's a French company that's doing really high-end stuff on like bay cruisers, and so it's just been kind of an interest that I've been looking into.
Yeah.
Does someone have an interest in clean hydrogen? I've seen some recent stuff about clean hydrogen and storage and the downside or like inapplicability of it. And I'm curious.
There's a second series besides the Storage X series. There's an energy series at Stanford as well. And 2 months back or 3 months back, I posted one where Stephen Chu spoke, and he actually believed that clean hydrogen is a very likely strong candidate going forward. There's a lot of research at Stanford being done on it, different ways of producing the hydrogen. I mean, it's every place, but it takes a lot of energy to get it. And he was talking about the progress that they were making. It'd be great if somebody put a talk together on that too.
I wouldn't do it next month, but I'd be willing to put something into hydrogen for maybe the month after.
Okay, good.
I've mentioned this before. There's an individual, Richard Heinberg. He's my wife's one of her students is married to him, and so I met him several times. And he's a fellow at the Post Carbon Institute, and he's written a number of books on the future of carbon, and he does give lectures, and potentially we could have him talk to us.
Okay. You want to look into that?
Yeah. would anyone be interested in like pursuing that, and seeing if there's a possibility of getting him to speak to us?
I know who he is. I'd be interested.
What was that?
Hasn't he written some pretty incredible books about?
Yes. You go to the website of the Post-Traumatic Institute, and he has written a number of books, and he has spoken all over the world, been invited to speak all over the world. Obviously, he's not doing that right now because he can't travel, but
if we got him to present, I think we'd get quite a few people coming. Yeah.
He would probably require an honorarium of some sort. I don't know how much it would cost, but it might take some money to get him to talk to us.
Let's check into it, and if we do that, then maybe we can stretch out and find more people who'd be interested in attending.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see what he's interested in, and also what we have to decide what we want him to talk about. He can talk about. He probably has any number of potential lectures that he could present to us, and various subjects, and all related to. He's a kind of a futurist. He talks about where things are going, and how quick we'll get there. So.
Okay, well, we didn't have enough material to fill 2 hours today, but we went for 2 hours and 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll go down that road, see what happens, and let you know what I find out. I don't know what his schedule is or whether he's available, or I haven't brought this up to him at all. So
John, you got a point you want to make?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, Lowell. I also am I'm going to receive a new Sunny Boy grid tied inverter that has the 2 kilowatt power supply in it, and I thought I'm going to install that, and if people would be interested in hearing me talk about what I find and how I deal with it, I'd be glad to talk about it some. So, okay.
I'm super interested.
You should do a video of your installation process.
Oh yeah.
I also have some unconventional plans that I may have mentioned, like plugging my 400 volt EV battery into the same port as the solar array during the nighttime, and using that 2 kilowatts at night. So.
You should video that too.
Yeah. The sparks, right?
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll post the presentation, and have the video up there probably in the next 24 hours or so. Web team, you're going to meet at some point to talk about next steps?
Sure.
Okay, why don't you guys get together?
Okay.
Do you want to know?
No, I apologize. I've definitely been AWOL on this. I need to get back on online, and Cecilia and I will talk to each other to try to get something going.
Okay, very good. All right. Goodbye, everybody. See you again on September 12th.
Okay, great.
All right.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Where's the mouse now?